So again, just to kind of reiterate, we have this new tool, and sorry, I guess I can't share links very easily while I'm in full screen. So I'll encourage Glenn to, post the link to our Blockbusters page, which I hope is not too new to many of you, but I guess we'll have the link in a second. But this is where you can sign up for these blocks. And again, as Glenn said, a good first goal as we're sitting here, in April, it's not really worth it to go out to these areas at this point in time because there's just not, a lot of those birds are barely hitting the southern states at this point. So they're certainly not here breeding yet. But now is a great time to be planning, try to figure out how you can get to some of these areas. And again, communication is key. We kind of want to know who we can rely on to go to these places. And that's our goal of, as we've said, like turning these green. So on this first map, we just want people to let us know like where they think or where they're committing to going. Because again, we really don't want to be duplicating effort on a lot of these. Because so much of this sits in this kind of northwest corner that is the North Main woods. What I thought I would do, and this is where, again, I'll encourage the folks that spend more time up here, please chime in, but I'm trying to plan a trip right now. It's this little inverted T over here that I really have my heart set on to go camping for a few days, bring some friends with me and see what we can do in that area. So as I'm learning how to get to that area, I thought I would show like, what are some of the tools I've been using in my planning? And then, then we'll kind of wrap up with our other trip that we have planned, currently on the books. And sorry, something else I forgot, but again, chime in throughout, and we'll get there. The first thing, realizing that the North Main Woods is this, literally an incorporated area. Like it's kind of a funny thing to think about. Like it's not just wilderness up there. It truly is this industrial forest. And there are rules to follow. There are gates to check in at, fees to pay. A wonderful thing about being a volunteer for the Maine Bird Atlas is that you can get free access to the area. Sorry, might be getting ahead of myself on these slides, but knowing northmainwoods.org, I think it is. The Zoom thing's covering my screen right now, but going to that website really has some of the best information that you can get for the area, especially under business links, because we're going to be talking about, it's this idea of these extended trips. I'll drive this point home a few times of like, these are not places that you're doing day trips. You really are going to need to spend some time, almost certainly at least one night. And as you'll see, being able to spend at least a couple days and with a couple people is how these blocks are going to really get done. So under the business links, they have everything from campgrounds and cabin rentals. So keep these in mind, because a thing we'll try to drive home is like this won't have to all kind of fall on you. We have these travel grants available. If you can put together an outing like this, we can help fund some of these things. Again, here's just some information, like you'll see this on their website, but like there's if you're not atlasing, they have these day use fees, but especially thanks to Bob and Sandy going through the checkpoints so often this winter, I'm sure they're very well versed with the fact that you are a volunteer for, Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. So in the same way that you can access any state parks in the state, you don't need to pay the fees to enter those as well, assuming you're atlasing. Don't go to, whatever, Sebago Lake State Park and go swimming with your niece and nephew and call that atlasing. Don't get us in trouble. But it is nice to know that these this can be more accessible to us by having those fees waived. Another really helpful one on here under the maps dropdown. It's probably more maps than than you might even need. One of my favorite ones is this this wall map here. And an interesting thing about it is it truly is a wall map. It's a 7 megabyte PDF that you'll download, but it's incredibly detailed. And what I like about it, when you first see it here, it's not too helpful, but again, at a 7 meg file, you can zoom right in. And it really, as far as I can tell, again, I'll encourage folks to chime in, this is some of the best road maps that I've been able to find. Your DeLorme Atlas is pretty good. This is where I would start arguing that like Google Maps can show you all sorts of little roads that you probably don't want to go down, but this is at least going to help you pick, some of the routes that you should be truly traveling on. Campsites are identified on here, but I don't like this map so much for planning, and it's mostly because it's kind of so removed from anything else we want to see for the Atlas. So if I can go back for a second, they have a link on here to download a, what's the extension, KML?
KMZ.
KMZ. To get that Google Earth map, which looks a little busy when you first load it, but that's kind of one of the nice things of this. And they have them broken up by the different types of campsites that are available. We also have that same file for all of our blocks. So this is where it starts becoming a lot easier to use something like Google Earth. Here's my, inverted T. Sorry, the contrast isn't great in this image, but here are these, 5 priority blocks that still need to be completed. You can see the other ones around it too. Again, this is where I would say like these road maps, really not so great, but at least I can now see what campsites are essentially right in those blocks. And keep doing a little more research. This was kind of the funny thing, having never camped in these sites. All my trips to the North Maine woods are usually to, I've always been into a cabin. My father-in-law has a little camp up at Cockmagomic. So camping was new to me. And this is where, sorry, this looks very pixelated. On the website, they have a breakdown of the of all these camping sites and what is available at all of them. And a really important thing to realize, it was this Priestley campsite. If I can go back over here, here's one that looks, ideal. That's where I want to stay. It's fairly, well located. A little tricky with the river there, but at least I assume there's a bridge that we can cross. We'll confirm that before we go. But it's funny to look at this and say like, oh, there are these other campsites down here that maybe that would be a good place to access some of these other ones, until you do your research and realize like the Priestley camp here does say number of sites. There are 2. There's 1 picnic shelter, access to water, and access by vehicle. That seems pretty important because access by canoe, you can see a lot of them.
That's what I was going to say, Doug.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me tee up the joke there, where 7, which one was it? 7 islands and Simmons up here, like on either side, you're not getting there by vehicle.
Those campsites too, they're amazing. I stayed at a couple a few years ago with the picnic table and the shelter above. It's, it's a step up in the world in some of these places to go camping there. It's, very nice.
If I may jump in and add a little bit.
Please.
There is a big difference between what the campsites are in Delorme's and what there are in North Main Woods. North Main Woods maps are very accurate in terms of the campsites, and they're very good. Sandy and I do in the Jackman area, which is outside of North Main Woods management area, found a lot of campsites that are marked on Delorme's that used to be there and just really weren't existing anymore. So there's a difference between the two maps as when you see campsites on them. Second thing is when you look at the road maps, as Doug was pointing out, most of the major roads are highways. They're really big and robust. It's easy to navigate them. They're in good shape. The only thing I would ever recommend is either drive slowly or have an extra spare tire, because people do get flats on them. A lot of the rock on the roadbeds is shale, and it's crushed shale, so it can be sharp. So be prepared for that. I find if I do 30 miles an hour instead of the 45-mile-an-hour speed limit, I get where I want to go without having to change a tire. So that matters quite a bit. Thirdly, when you go through the gate, they have kind of a routine. First of all, the management at North Main Woods knows about this project, and they've been very cordial about it. There's a work log somewhere besides the place where most of the people sign in. If you just tell them you're with the Atlas, you need to sign in the work log, they probably won't even ask twice what you're doing. It'll be kind of a routine for them. If for any reason it's not routine, we can address that later with North Main Woods Association, but it's actually a pretty routine thing to go in there, do it for free, go where you want to, and just, again, sign out when you leave, and that's it.
And in the past, when I was there, they had up in the North Main Woods offices, and gates, they would have big maps that you could take with,
and olive oil, my
showing the campsites as well.
a little dish.
Yeah, and they still do. Yeah, and when you pick up their annual pamphlet, which is available at the checkpoints as you check in, be sure to pick that up and read the article I wrote for them.
The other thing, Doug, where you like to rely a lot on your computer and on your cell phone, you definitely want to bring that hard copy map along, because a lot of the places you go, your cell phone isn't going to work.
Yeah, I'll show. Certainly, please keep chiming in. I also don't expect to use our, go to 8:30 on this. I'll just make a few more plugs here. Maybe even ask Bill Sheehan to chime in, because I was going to use a little case study of a trip that he put together last summer to get up into this northwest corner. It was a very efficient trip to knock out some of those blocks that were, not going to get done otherwise. So I wanted to start with the fun plug that this is so much fun. This is some of the most fun birding you can do in the state, especially in July. You don't want to go to Scarborough Marsh in July. You're going to get eaten by greenheads. There's nothing to see there. Some of the early southbound shorebirds I saw in these north ponds were unbelievable to me. I had no idea that yellowlegs were flocking in some of these lakes in northern Maine. There's not a breeder, but just saying, there's so much kind of cool stuff to discover, and we had an absolutely just fun time. Smiles all around. I do want to criticize this one photo. This is not the way to Atlas in these remote blocks. We should not have 5 people congregating together. I'll give some tips. real quick on how to do that. Oh, and this was the follow-up photo to Bill and Don looking over the map here, drawing, knowing that we weren't going to have service where we were getting into these blocks. You know, one of the most helpful things was to just create, you know, a very crude but close enough approximation of where those priority blocks were on that DeLorme Atlas that we had in the trucks with us. So
Doug, this is Rob.
yes.
And I do the same thing on the DeLorme. I put draw in the blocks on the DeLorme, but I know Bob's used this as well. The Avenza is a software application, and you can use it when you're off the grid. Because it's you have your GPS, and you basically the Avenza uses. I've downloaded all the DeLorme maps, and I can put pins in and duplicate these blocks that I put on the paper copy. There's another application as well called OnX that you can use. So when you're up there and you're off the grid, you have this map that shows you exactly where you are. If you've drawn in the blocks, you know when you're entering it, and if you've got your eBird up, it'll tell you as you get to near the edge of that block. So eBird will tell you too when you're near the edge of that block. So. And then in addition to that, I get an aerial photograph off Google of the block. I mean, I get Google up and I draw the block on the Google aerial map, and then I print that out. So there are a lot of ways you can do it that make it really easy.
Thank you for
That's
sharing
true.
that.
Yeah, hey Doug.
Yeah.
So this is Dan Gibbons. So what I use is Gaia Maps, GAIA, and you can download basically what just looks like a Google topo map. And on top of that, you can put the KML file that we have available on the Atlas breeding site. And I know exactly where I am. I mean, again, it just picks up the GPS from your phone. You don't need any type of cell service or anything. It's tremendous. You know exactly what block you're in. You can see all the little roads you're on. And they keep it really well updated on the logging roads and access of that point. So that's another great way to do it.
Okay, I'm going to chime in with one more tip, which I did not know. But when we did our winter atlas surveys, if you go out there in the woods, fire up eBird and try to see the tracked maps, you don't get anything because you have no signal. But if you look at those maps before you lose your signal, apparently eBird will remember them. And when you get to that block, you can get right down to the map level on that. I'm not sure how much notice eBird needs to store that, but I'm still experimenting with it. But I was shocked that I could use those really fine maps out far from any kind of contact because I just did that one preparatory step ahead of time.
And Bob, I'll just add to that if you before you lose your cell service, if you take a macro view as opposed to a small view, it seems to store that macro view, which gives you a much greater area when you get off the grid.
And there are some pretty good tips, like as folks have said here, your phone, even when it doesn't have cellular reception, it's still going to pick up your location via GPS. It's still talking to satellites. So you can do like, sorry, what do they call them? Offline maps on Google. You can like download the base maps for an area. So you can still at least like see where you are on that map. So like when we were doing this, we had no service up here, but I could at least like on my phone still see with that base Google map and the blue dot of exactly where I was. I could see like, oh, we're coming up to, you know, I'm making this up right now, but oh, this stream, we're coming right up to the stream. Like we must be just about to enter it. Maybe not try to start right on the boundary, but you at least, you know, can kind of know that you're getting into a block. I made up the boundary of this block, but I wanted to use this to kind of illustrate. This is one of the reasons we were so successful on that trip that Bill put together. We were able to target blocks by having 6 people, we took 2 cars to get into these blocks, but imagining that this was the habitat, you know, this is the actual trek from Ebert of where I walked, just this one stretch of road, but a really kind of efficient way to do this, and why we're trying to put these together as these blockbusting trips to get up there with multiple people, is you can get these done really efficiently. So the way we did this one was, I was the first person to hop out of the car. We knew we were right on the boundary, so I went from there and started walking down the road. The next person hopped out of the car a little further down, dropped off another person who, you know, tried to cut into the woods, get into different type of habitat. Next person was a little slower, mostly stationary. Person number 5, just covering a longer area, and then having, you know, a 6th person, again, trying to just cover a little bit of diversity of that habitat. Once the first person's done, they get back in the car and then drive back and pick everyone up on the way out. And all of a sudden, you know, 6 of us, we spent about 2 hours in that block. 6 times 2, there's 12 hours of effort. This block needed 15 hours total because it was a remote block. We completed this block within 2 hours of effort. Then we were off to the next block. And that's why, you know, when you see that map, I guess I'm past it now, but like, that's why we're, you know, in a few days, with a bunch of people putting in that concentrated effort, we're able to complete this pretty quickly. Maybe I'll have the Deshanes explain this one. I tried to come up with a visualization, as they had often described how they do some of their atlasing, especially in some of these blocks. So did I get this right?
Yes, essentially, we call it leapfrogging. And basically, you start at the edge of the block, drop one person off, agree on the distance that the car is going to drive.
2
Usually,
sets of keys.
yeah, 2 sets of keys, or find a good hiding place for that one set of keys so the other person can find it. And that person drives down 1 mile, 2 miles, whatever you agree on, and parks the car on the side of the road and starts walking. And the first person walks back up to the car, picks it up, and then drives down to pick up the second person. Highly efficient. We did most of like Aroostook County that way this winter, and we're able to peel off a lot of mileage really fast just by using this method.
And I think a good point, I hope this doesn't sound elementary to this group of folks, but like, just to make the point of that earlier photo I showed of, you know, the 5 people birding together. The reason we don't want to be doing that is that that would only count as like essentially one person's effort. So by having people spread out, covering different areas of the block, that's when you're now, you know, counting that as separate effort. All those hours are going into the block towards that completion goal. We obviously want people to be safe while they're up there. So this is where I would never encourage you to, you know, go really far off track or anything like that. But that is kind of I'll say one of the key points of getting this done.
If I could add one thing to what Bob just said, we're also very strategic when we go to a remote area. We'll look for priority blocks that kind of follow the roads that we're on, and we kind of try to map out a route so that we're not just doing one priority block per day. We're doing one priority block that happens to be just a block or happens to be kitty corner to the next priority block that isn't done. And so we'll try to map out a route that lets us hit 2 to 3 blocks in a day rather than just having to do 1 or 2 that are way, way away from each other. We'd really try to group them up as much as possible. That's going to probably be harder this summer where the blocks are getting fewer and farther between. But it's still, if you're going to make the effort to go into these remote areas, you try to be as efficient with your driving as you can be.
Thank you. And I guess just fun screenshot to show, like, this was the block we were working on. Again, you can see here we were, you know, the 6 of us all nicely spread out, all using our offline checklist. So you can see like the lat long getting plugged in here. You know, before that, Finn and Kyle, who were technicians, and I guess Connor doing point counts, they had helped work up those species lists a little bit, but the effort just wasn't there. So like, we knew that this block, it really needed a lot of time. And that's why we said 6 of us are going in there and getting this done. So that was one that, bumping up a lot of those, I think they had gotten quite a few just possible codes. So we were there a little bit later. You know, a few weeks can make all the difference for breeding behaviors. And, you know, July 21st, every bird you're looking at is doing some sort of pretty much confirmed, if not, it's pretty easy to get probable codes at that point. So especially when you like look back at that that second map that we have that shows you each block and whether it needs effort, whether it needs more species, what that's coming down to. Like, that's where I really hope you can kind of use that tool and plan out, you know, what is it that you're going to do when you go to these blocks. Glenn did a tremendous effort to get that tool working. As he said, you can click on each block to see, you know, what it needs. I thought I would just mention, you know, a thing that we were looking at, well, while we had internet, while we had cell service up there, before we were going into these blocks, we were looking at what species were in there, what the numbers of our probable and confirmed. We want that total to be, sorry, total of those 2 to be 60% of the total species in there. And sorry, I just took screenshots because I didn't want to waste our time watching the internet load. But you can always, like, one of the best ways to get this list is go into, find that block on the explore page. If you don't know how to do that, happy to show it after we cover this. But you can sort it by breeding evidence. So this is only showing the ones that are confirmed, but if we were to scroll down, you would see those probables, which we don't need to worry about too much. We want probable is within that total, but to see, you know, what are those 10 possible species that we should put some effort in and try to target those.
So yeah, I'd often, you know, you can actually copy that list and paste it into a Word document or an Excel file. So I'd often do that when I'm heading out in the field. One thing about these blockbusting trips that I think I enjoy the most, it's, you know, I've participated in a few blockbusting trips the first 4 years of the Atlas. And what I enjoyed the most was getting together with your fellow Atlasers over the campfire at night and sharing stories of, you know, what you found, you know, how could you confirm this species? Maybe I was struggling the whole day to find a way to get any breeding code on a species, and somebody else figured it out on that day. And we'd exchange those stories over the campfire at night. And I learned so much by doing that. That's the joy of these kind of trips.
Kind of the opposite of joy. That's my next slide. Some of the perils and pitfalls of atlasing. This video on the left was this was my last day when I was had driven. We were up at Cockmagomic at my father-in-law's camp up there. The last day was when I was like, okay, I've got this priority block. I don't think anyone else is going to get to it. I'll make the long drive to get there. And as I was driving there, it started raining. And I sat there and watched it get rainier and rainier. And it ended up being a pretty bad downpour for the rest of the day, which really squashed the atlasing. That was a really tough one. I saw like one red start in like 20 minutes of trying to find shelter, there was one red start that like moved through, not carrying food or anything. It was just, it's not what they were working on. So keeping that in mind, I want to drive home this point. This was, I found this was a screenshot I took off my phone. I was trying to find nice, happy pictures from that trip I tagged along briefly with Bill Sheehan last summer. And I found this screenshot of my phone as I was leaving the camp that we were staying at, about to drive home. And it told me that the drive I had ahead of me just to get home. And this was from our camp. This wasn't even like in where these remote blocks were. It was going to be just under 6 hours. So that's me coming from Windham, Southern Maine-ish. So again, like, we want to make the point that like this takes a lot of effort to get into these places, and if you're going to put that effort in, let's be as efficient as possible.
Could I ask two questions that are related to logistics, but also to being a regional coordinator? I've had blocks that people adopted first year, second year. Some of them are adopted by text. And I've checked in with them and they said, oh yeah, we're gonna get to them, but they haven't done anything since year one. So I'm not sure what to do about that. And number two, we see up there in the North Maine Woods and in other remote areas that aren't within the North Maine Woods Inc., all of these Maine forestry camps, like, you know, kind of bunkhouses. Is there any reason that one department can't talk to the other and we couldn't use those bunkhouses? Because a lot of times those are right ideally situated to do a number of priority blocks in areas that haven't been done.
Yeah, I'd suggest reach out to Adrian on the bunkhouses. That she would know about making those connections. It makes a lot of sense to me, but we'd have to get Adrian to weigh in on that. I think we've had some successes in doing that, but not across the board. So I don't quite know the complication, but I check with Adrian on that.
Yeah, the shorthand complication is that there's two separate departments, so they're siloed.
Yeah. And regarding the block adoptions that we've, you know, in a sense, we've done away with block adoptions this year, and really that Atlas Blockbuster map, that's kind of the new block adoption thing. And I'm actually going to be emailing everybody who signs up for a block kind of regularly throughout the summer, just making sure it's still on their radar. And if it isn't, you know, I'll code it differently on the Blockbuster map. So
Does that mean that I can stop babysitting the people who have signed up for adopting blocks that aren't doing so? All right.
yeah. Yep.
It's the final year. We're what's the expression? We're taking our gloves off.
Binoculars on.
Yeah, I like that.
Well, the other suggestion that I would have for getting into some of these remote areas is actually reaching out to people. That another way to support the Atlas might be to host somebody staying with you for a night, basically couch surfing. You know, for people, there's a lot of people who might be willing to go up there, but they're just not the camping type. But if they had somebody's couch to surf on for the night, you know, with a sleeping bag or just with a, you know, a couple of sheets and a blanket to sleep with, it would be another way to get people up into the area, and it would be a way for people to contribute to the effort who can't necessarily get into the field themselves, but might love to hear those stories at night that Glenn was talking about, which are definitely a way, you know, vicarious birding can also be very fun.
I think also, I think Doug and Glenn mentioned right at the beginning that communications is important. And in my case, I've got a couple of blocks I've got to finish up there. And I had another one I wanted to focus on. There were others around. I wasn't really quite sure which one to focus on, and contacted Bill and Sheehan and Glenn, and they helped me focus on a particular one that I think Glenn in particular wanted to have covered. And so that helped me firm up my plans as at a minimum. So communications is important, and these guys can really help you focus if you're having trouble trying to figure it out.
Yeah, no, I'd be interested in hearing folks' experience, who've done a lot of work in North Main Woods, traveled on those roads. I'd be interested in hearing how you guys navigate the roads, whether or not you plan it all out before you go and keep track of mileage and turns that you make, whether or not you just kind of use a North Main Woods map and go off of that, or a gazetteer, or some electronic thing for navigating up there. I'd be curious to hear what folks have been using just in road navigating up there.
I use, this is Rob, I have the Delorme map, as I think I mentioned, and I've got the blocks penciled, penned out on that. I also use an application that allows me to see, as Doug mentioned, the blue dot. I can see exactly where I am. On one application I have is called Avenza, and you download all the Delorme maps. And as Bob Deshane will tell you, they're not necessarily up to date, but they're pretty good. And you know exactly where you are at any point in time. I also print out an aerial of each block, and I've got that all lined off. And the nice thing about the Google, you can print out a Google map and with your block defined, and then you can enhance it. And you can see all the little tote roads, many of which you hope you can go down. And often you find that they're all growing back up. Some are starting to grow back up, but you can still go down those roads. But it's really a whole bunch of different resources that you have in your hip pocket. And as you said, the main logging roads are a cinch to drive on. The secondary ones, I have a Jeep, and I go down places that a lot of people aren't going to go. I drive. You can drive in quite a long way some of these roads, and you have to be really careful. I'm going to get a MERS radio so I can monitor the trucks. You need to be off the road. Anytime you need to be well off the road. You need to be very vigilant about logging trucks. They can come roaring around a corner and right in your face. And you have to really be very, very careful. And you need to get right out of their way. It's their roads, and it's a privilege to be there. So
I will also add that the maps that I got right off the Atlas site, the topo maps, were really good in terms of what you can see what the big roads, the arteries are, and you can see what looks like roads, all the logging roads off the side. You've got 15 hours at least in the area, so you have time to actually walk virtually everything in a 3x3 mile area. So really, I just looked at where the arteries were, parked on them, and tried to camp there at night because I have a van that could do it. And then I would simply walk every available road. And sometimes you get to the start of the road, see that it's all grown in, it's not walkable anymore. You cross it off your list and move on to the next one. So I found I could cover an entire block relatively easily, even using the maps that were online.
yeah, I agree.
I think the most important thing that you can bring into the North Main Woods is a flexible attitude. You're going to find things you didn't expect to find. And if you're the sort of person that gets wicked upset if things don't go exactly to plan, then maybe you shouldn't go up. But, if you're just able to say, oh, okay, well, I guess this bridge is out. What do we do now? And yeah, it may take a little bit longer. Yeah, sometimes you run into those big rainstorms, Doug. We've been there too. Just barely arrive at a remote block and suddenly there's this blizzard that shuts down all the birding activity and makes you think that it's time to scoot out of there before you get kind of into a bad place. But if you have a decent attitude and just treat it like an adventure, then it's fine.
Yeah, Most of it is, the large roads are drivable without a whole lot of difficulty. The side roads are walkable, and you've got a lot of time to walk them, and they can be an awful lot of fun. There's some places I could not drive to that I walked this last summer, and I said, "Oh my God, I can't wait to do this again."
Bob Duchesne, I have a question for you. This is Chuck.
Yep.
I have a camper van, a small one that I rigged up.
I know
You
you're
mentioned you mentioned you parked your van on the side of the road. Do you need to tell folks when you check into the gate that you're going to be doing that, or
Nope, not at all.
just park anywhere? And
Park anywhere, do whatever you want.
Off the
Wow.
main road.
You know, poop in the woods, whatever you need to do.
fabulous. Thank you.
A good
So
thing.
I have a quick question. So I'm very interested in going up there, but I don't know anyone else who birds. No one's even remotely interested in going with me. So are these, if you plan some kind of trip, are you going to send out like, hey, an email, we're doing this trip, who's interested? Because I won't be doing it by myself. The maps is just over my head and I'm not going up there by myself. So that was just something I wanted to throw out, how that's going to be coordinated. Thanks.
Yeah,
Why don't you reach out to the coordinator in whatever area interests you? And I'm sure that they, number one, they might be willing to meet you there and bird with you wherever you're thinking about going. And they can also let you know about any blockbuster trips that they're planning in that area. So look at what looks good to you on the map and figure out how far you want to drive, and then just reach out to that regional coordinator.
the other thing is on the Blockbuster website. I'll post a link to that in the chat here in a second. At the very bottom of the page, there's actually a calendar of Blockbuster events that people are planning. I posted the one that Doug and I are planning in Island Falls on that calendar. But we're going to encourage folks as they get trips where they want to invite they need more birders to come with. We're going to encourage them to use that calendar to post their trips. So that'll be a place to check as well. So I'll post a link to that here in a second.
And I imagine our weekly Q&As will also be a good place where, as we get these more finalized, we'll certainly announce them there and can, come up with plans. I certainly envision where, for me, if it's going to take me 6 hours to get just into some of these places, I'm going to try to find people I can carpool with. I'm not going to make that drive by myself from Southern Maine. So anyone I can pick up along the way. And this is a great segue. As we, look at this map, we have this, this sea that inverted sea that Glenn was talking about. It's really nice to see these blocks starting to turn green already, even before we're really, tonight is really one of the first times we've been showing off this tool. So I'm hoping collectively we can start turning these green as we start making plans and getting up there. As Glenn and I were preparing for tonight, we looked at this and there's a nice chunk right here that seems pretty accessible to people. It's right along 95. Let me zoom in. As Glenn was just saying, Island Falls right here. I think my next slide might say Oakfield because that's where I was first focusing. But a lot of orange blocks, some red blocks, even some the blue. They just need effort. We just need people to go stand there for an hour, Atlas. But the point is that this is kind of a nice chunk that has varying degrees of expert that can go into it. So our first, official, if you will, blockbusting trip that we're going to do is going to be, the idea is to go up on the 7th. We'll come up with a plan that evening, and then we can spend all day on the 8th and the 9th. And I believe this is it's a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So sorry that that's for anyone working. That might be a tough schedule, but we'll work on some weekend opportunities as well. The really nice thing about doing it midweek is that for areas like campgrounds, there's lots of availability. So what we're going to do at this Birch Point campground, we have a single cabin reserved. That's where we can at least make meals. I think our tentative plan right now is to at least take care of all the dinners and then, have that kitchen area available as people want to use it. Sleeps 5 or so, but then there are on this property, there are a bunch of areas for campsites. So if anyone, just wants to set up a tent, we'd love the help. I think this is going to be kind of our first big effort. The way I look at this map, to think, sorry, it's somewhere right around here. If I remember correctly, where this campsite is, I think each day we're going to look at what blocks we can access, who's willing to go where. We can, put teams of birders into a car. We can put 2 people in a car to go do the patented Deshane leapfrog. We can put 6 people in a couple trucks to get into, seeing like this twin brook. Like that needs a lot of time and effort. If we've got some people who are saying, I'm brand new to the Atlas, like, great, go check out these. Here's 3 blocks that even if you don't find any breeding birds, there's 3 blocks there towards our total 300 that we need to get done. Go find rock pigeons under bridges, or, whatever species are there. But I think, this is going to be a great opportunity to kind of hopefully take a big chunk out of this. But again, we'll only be successful if we can get a bunch of people there. And I think having this nice concentration of blocks, my goal would be like 20 people that we can give marching orders each evening. Everyone gets up early the next morning, goes out, and I think we should be able to get all this done in those 3 days. So
They had Rick Nail's Thrush up on Mount Chase back in the 90s. It's right there.
that's an endorsement.
I've gone back after, but. Oh, and also, Doug, you should pump up the bowling alley in the basement of the lodge too. That's,
Oh, news to me.
yeah.
This is that local knowledge we're talking about.
Yeah, I'm reliving my wasted youth right now.
Isn't that a
So
little early?
sorry if I missed a comment there.
Was that Dale?
Dale Dory, Bill Sheehan would know this better, but isn't that kind of far north for early June to knock off any confirms?
Oh, I think you can get nesting and stuff like that. You could, some of the late birds are just still coming in, but there's plenty of targets still.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
It's not
but-
as easy as July, but
And honestly, like
yeah, it's-
kind of one of the purposes of this is that we're doing it early enough that you'll come on this and be a better atlaser. You'll learn some tricks so that by the time July comes around, we'll have even, maybe you have planned some more trips. So I definitely want to acknowledge it's probably not the ideal time, but I think if we get enough people putting in enough effort,
and it
fingers crossed.
it may take another trip as well to clean up a couple of blocks. It is on the early side, but if, I think Birch Point Campground is actually well situated. It would be pretty easy for us to go back in a couple weeks later and do any mop up that may be needed on some of these blocks.
And those
Finish
blocks
them up.
will all turn blue, and then you can just zip in on your way to grandma's house and burn it
Yeah.
out. And
Then if
Well,
I
do
may,
a
I think that's
victory
a
lap.
key point. I think the idea of getting people who may not be all that comfortable in their abilities to put some time, get the low-hanging fruit, and then having other people go back and clean up is very efficient. It doesn't take that long to clean up because you may have a target list of 5 species that you have to go find to help clean up. That doesn't necessarily take so long. So the initial effort is actually very important, even for somebody who is not all that experienced with being up there or in the woods burning it all. So I would highly recommend that. Also, when it comes to blockbusting trips, I think what worked best for some of the trips we've been on for blockbusting is cold beer at the end of the day.
I'll bring the beer.
The other thing that you can do is have an experienced birder pair up with an inexperienced birder. And even though it's not as efficient as having everybody take a separate route, it kind of lets them learn the ropes and just kind of develop a feeling of confidence so that the next time you go out, they feel okay taking a section for themselves.
And sorry, I'll apologize. I realized I hadn't checked the chat in a while, but it looks like great comments. I want to really say how much I appreciate everyone chiming in with some great info for this. So for joining us here, emailing Glenn is going to be our prime way of organizing people right now. So that main bird atlas at Gmail account. I would say even at this point, if you're even not, sure, obviously that's a middle of the week in June. We hope people don't have too many plans, but the sooner we can figure out like how many people we could get, we can try to get more, pick up a couple campsites, whatever we need to do to make sure we can be successful up here. And so
That cabin has 3 single beds and 1 queen bed in it. So if you want a bed in the cabin, sign up early. Those may go quick. If you want some privacy, I'm getting a tent site at the campground and have a little more privacy if you are interested in that.
If you stay in the cabin, you might have to make coffee for us if we're those of us in the tents. But let us know. I think the sooner we can start putting together a list of people, it's gonna, when we know how many people we have, how much effort we can spread out, we can start turning those blocks green and get them off of people's radars. We can consider them effectively covered. So that's kind of what I wanted to end on tonight, is to put this map up here. And I apologize there. We're missing part of, Washington County that definitely has some blocks, even some of the Western Mountains. A lot of the ones kind of south of there are already turning green. But you can see where the focus is. If you felt intimidated at all by, we obviously talked about North Main Woods a lot because there's a lot of blocks up there. But again, like we found this chunk here, and this is, you can see the 95 corridor, Route 1, Bill Sheehan's backyard. Got some work to do. This is all, pretty easy to access, if you felt intimidated at all by anything we've covered. There's some low-hanging fruit that's all around the state as well. So
Hey, this is Kathy Brown.
Kathy, so glad that you made it.
I'm very excited about coming up and helping. Jeff and I are gonna work in some blocks together. I lived in Presque Isle for a while, so that area up there, I'm beyond camping on the ground, you know, I'm just too old for that. But I'm gonna get up there as much as I can, and I'm gonna talk to Jeff and email you guys. I just wanted to say hi.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to get up there. I love going to the places other people don't want to go. I'm not afraid to walk around the back roads all by myself. So I'm going to be all in there with you guys, and we'll figure it out. But I'm available. You know, I don't have a job and I have a very understanding husband. So
Dream.
you know, help with gas money sometimes. He's sponsored. I mean, last year Jeff and I went to Winterville, and my husband sponsored that whole trip up there for me, all my gas, food. I stayed in a cabin up there, had a blast. Like, I think I'm with you. I have a blast doing this. I love it. That's what I wanted to say.
One other
Thanks.
recommendation, one other recommendation that I'd like to make, for those who don't want to go all the way up into the North Woods, which is certainly understandable, if anyone from the more urban areas can just sag northward a little bit and cover some of those blocks that are closer, so that those of us who are coordinating Greenville, Jackman, whatever, can get into Aroostook County a little more, that'd be helpful. So you don't, it's very valuable to go northward to cover areas that are closer to humanity. And that will help get the rest of it done.
Yeah, well, I've done a lot of blocks in Somerset County. And am I unmuted?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I've done some in there because I have family members up there, and I know, so like the Norwalk area I know really well, and I've been doing some of those. I would love to go on some of these back logging roads. I've just never done it. Plus, I can't sleep in a tent. I'm just a little too old for that. But I would love to come do whatever I can. So.
Yeah, we're looking into some of the camps that are up there. There's a lot of like private camps that you know, hunting camps basically, that
Yeah.
we'll do what we
If I
can
can sleep
to.
in a bed in a cabin, that doesn't intimidate me at all.
Yeah, you should have seen this place that Bill Sheehan found for us up in Allagash. That was like
I would love to do
five-star
that.
hotel as far as it helped, you know, with Bill's cooking as well. It was we're living the life.
Yeah, and the Maine Bird Atlas can help with, you know, travel costs, can help, you know, cover the cost of cabin, whatever. Just let us know what you need to help make this work. We're, you know, people have been sponsoring Species, which has been giving us a pot of money that we can back into the Atlas to help you guys.
Well, I'm trying to finish up Tenants Harbor, and I went there this morning, and it only needs like 2.6 species to get it done. So once I'm done with that, there's really not much left down around us. So I'm ready to go north. And I'll just email you guys and we'll talk. I don't want to take up everybody's time, but I wanted to say hi. It's nice to see your faces.
Thank you,
Yeah.
and I'll make the quick plug. If folks, you know, we just got the newsletter up in the last day or two. Kathy shared an absolutely wonderful article in that, so check it out. A heartwarming story that she had shared about atlasing and seeing woodcocks. That was one of my, like, I have my atlasing highlights, then I have my like outreach coordinator highlights of the atlas, and Kathy shares some absolutely wonderful stories that I see via like Facebook, and so happy that we could reproduce one of those in our newsletter. So really appreciate that.
Thank you.
That said, it's 8:42. Is there anything new in the chat? How are we feeling? You know, I'll really encourage folks to come to our weekly Q&As. I think, you know, maybe I should stop recording. We have such a purpose, you know, in this final year. We know exactly what we need to do to get done. in our first few years, we really weren't even talking about priority blocks so much because we wanted to see what we could get done, by people just being out atlasing. We got a ton done going that way, but we have this lofty goal going into the last year. We know it's doable. It's just going to take a lot of really directed effort. And I kind of see using those weekly Q&As are, we'll be there every week. We can, we'll have those maps updated on a weekly basis. We can tell you exactly where to go, how to spend your time. And I can really not thank you all enough because you guys are the ones putting in the effort that's making this thing complete. So as Glenn just said, like, let us know how we can help you be successful, and we really appreciate the time and effort that you're putting into it. So join us on Q&As, send us emails, whatever we can do to help.
Yeah, well said, Doug. Yeah, thanks, everyone.